no sports team tries to run through a whole game with no water, no timeouts, or rotating out players. Because that would be insane. You ain't gonna win anything like that. And that's with world-class athletes. So why would a farm be any different? I'm a farmer in the South, and I used to do manual labor farm jobs in Florida. So if you need to work outside in high heat and humidity and not die, I've got you covered. We're going to talk about how to stop heat stress before you get sick. There's all the normal stuff. Stay hydrated, take breaks in the shade. These are the basics. They will get you pretty far, and you will not make it without them. But the basics are also not enough to get you through a day of working outside on a farm, in my experience. You have to do a little bit more to make that work. Now, let me put it up front that I am not a doctor for humans. I'm a doctor for plants. So as far as heat stroke, I am not speaking as a doctor or an expert. I am just a person who works outdoors a lot in the South. Your mileage is going to vary. Everybody's body is different. This is just what I found to help me, and it's also combined with a lot of, here's how we train field crews to make sure we don't lose anybody on the job. Editing Sarah popping in real quick just to say, I launched right into Avoiding Heat Stroke 101 without explaining why we need to talk about it. Obviously, number one, people are getting heat stroke weather where there didn't used to be heat stroke weather. So if that's you, stay with me. I've got good info for you here. But we also need to talk about it because no matter where you live, this is how food gets on your table. Some of what I say here is going to be, here's how we take care of ourselves when we're working outdoors. And some of it will be, if you're supervising other people, here's what you need to be responsible for. So if you'll let me digress for just a second, and then we'll get back to how to work in hot weather and not die. It is not fun to talk about. But a lot of us farmers will just forget the basics, like bringing water to a hot day in the field. Or sometimes farmers bring the water, but it's just one little igloo cooler for a big crew, and no cups or bottles to get it out with, so the only way people can actually drink out of it is get your head under the spout, like keg stand style. You can't take a deep drink that way. And I wish that was a made-up example, but it's not. This really happened on a 20,000-acre farm here in North Carolina that has killed 2 employees in the last 3 years, allegedly, under truly gnarly circumstances. That 20,000-acre farm isn't some corporate operation. It is a very proud, multi-generational family farm that is a tentpole of North Carolina's family farm scene. It belongs to this woman, Lisa Barnes, a state senator here in North Carolina, who is such an expert on agriculture, allegedly, that she heads our state's agriculture committee. This is how farm politics really work, folks. Everybody likes to talk about rural politics like it's folksy, small-town America. This is how rural politics actually works. Autopsies keep magically finding that it's not this state senator's fault, that workers just keep dying on her farm. And who's doing those autopsies? North Carolina state employees. There are literally powerful people who don't want the public to understand how heat strokes and manual labor work, because that's how they get away with stuff. That's a lot of what's going on in this video today. Farmers, if we want respect, we gotta be worthy of that respect. Now, the reason that the basic tips aren't enough for working on the farm is working in the heat, especially if there's heavy equipment around, is a whole different thing than just being hot. Because the first thing that happens when you're overheating is it makes your brain work real bad. You're gonna get mentally fuzzy. On my farm, we call this the heat stupids. Hang on, I got the heat stupids. Now, this brain fog by itself will not hurt you, but if you're working a manual labor job where you gotta be coordinated, and especially around heavy equipment, you can't afford to be stupid. I know we have stereotypes about manual labor and how it's not for brainy folks, but you actually can't afford to be stupid with this. One little mistake leads to another, and even tiny mistakes with heavy equipment can kill you or the people around you. We can't afford that. So the heat stress symptoms we usually talk about, stuff like dizziness, headache, weak pulse, cramps, nausea, all that, to run a farm well, you have to stop heat stress way before all that stuff shows up. By the time you're dizzy, cramping, throwing up, it's been a while since you did any good work. And on your way to getting that sick, maybe you were shaky enough to hit the wrong button on the backhoe and run over a guy. Let's not do that. The other thing about overheating is it builds up. The first thing that happens is you get kind of dumb, like just a little bit. This is exactly how hypothermia works too. We just don't really talk about it as much with the heat for some reason. You get dumb, you start making bad decisions, it gets worse and worse, you get dumber and dumber, and by the time you're really in trouble, you are too mentally fuzzy to notice there's a problem anymore. That's how people get heat stroke. When you're working outdoors, in my experience, the most important part of handling heat stress is stopping it before your brain melts down. Once that happens, you are too fuzzy and clumsy to catch yourself. It's a spiral, and it can literally be a death spiral. So let's not do that. Let's nip it in the bud. And that means that out on the farm, our big yellow flag for heat stress is the heat stupids. If you deal with it then, you won't get to the part where you're clumsy and a danger to yourself and others, or to the part where you're so far gone that you're cramping and puking and shaking. So let's talk about the heat stupids and what to do about them. A lot of this is just getting to know your own body. You've got to know the signals your body is giving you, especially when I'm working with people who haven't done a lot of outdoor work before, or it's early in the season, so even experienced people haven't had a chance to get acclimated physically yet to high temperatures. We talk about this a lot on the farm, so people don't miss the signs and get into trouble. Because once somebody gets into trouble, we got to stop everything and do first aid. Heat stress sucks, and it's also not a very efficient use of our time. Stopping it before it starts is both kind and common sense. The fact that so many farmers just kind of let workers get sick on the job is insane. Have you ever met someone who works faster when they're having heat stroke? Y'all better let us know, because that's a scientific achievement. Editing Sarah back in here to say, you will hear me talk about how working a crew until they get heat stroke is inefficient, a bad way to run a business, because it is. And I say that knowing it's going to make some people upset. But shouldn't human life matter, even if it's bad for business? Yeah, it should. And if all us farmers believed in that, a lot of things would already be different, wouldn't they? Like it or not, and I don't, a lot of people do need to hear that working folks to death is bad for business. When you can do something about that, then come talk to me. Okay, I'm getting off topic. We were talking about the heat stupids. The heat stupids are the first sign that your body gives you when it's getting too warm. We can all be a little absent-minded sometimes, so it doesn't feel like an emergency. It doesn't even really feel different sometimes. You know, we've all had a moment where we're just, I'm so forgetful. But after a decades-long career where I spent a lot of time working outside, you start to notice some things. When I'm working outside and it's hot, I start forgetting where I put things. More than usual. I'll lose track of where I am at a task, and here's the big one. I will get real bad at putting my thoughts into words, which is why you don't see me shooting a lot of video on the farm, by the way. When the heat stupids are happening, I will feel like my thoughts are totally clear, but if someone asked me, hey, can you show me what you're doing? I'll be like, well, you just got to put this like this so it can, you think you're clear, but your brain has gone totally smooth. So to catch that, I've started running little checks on myself every few minutes. I will talk myself through what I'm doing, and if I can't, it's time to go drink some water. Distance and endurance athletes actually will do this a lot. They'll check themselves for brain fog by doing some math. I'm going this fast, there's another 10 miles, how long will it take me to finish? And if you can't run that mental math, that's how you know it's time to take a break, get some water, whatever it is that you need to do. And the reason that experienced outdoor workers and athletes have to keep checking ourselves like that is because the heat stupids don't feel like heat stress. They don't feel like anything's really wrong. They just kind of feel like the normal everyday brain fog that you get when you're hungry, tired, preoccupied. So it doesn't feel dangerous. It doesn't feel like you're slipping into a problem. It feels like normal brain fog. But if you didn't have that brain fog 20 minutes ago and you're out in the heat, that's the heat stupids. So I work real hard now to drill into myself and any helpers and employees that may be on the farm. The heat stupids are real and they are universal. That's why athletes check themselves for this and they sneak up on you. So that's why we got to know what the heat stupids are. Get to know what they feel like for us, and remember to use that as a sign to go take a break. The heat stupids are also why on this farm we use the buddy system. If it's below 95 degrees, I'll go work out there by myself sometimes when I have to, because it's my farm. So if I fry myself, oh well. And as long as it's in the low 90s or below, for employees that are experienced with working outdoors or veterans, they can come work on their own to suit their schedule if they need to. My farm has a big open shade tent for storing things out of the rain and for taking breaks out of the sun. And we also have a well that pumps out a lot of nice cold water. So this farm is set up for people to be able to get out of the sun and stay hydrated. Not every farm has that. If you've got a place where people are doing manual labor in high heat and there is no way to hydrate or get out of the sun, don't do that. Water and tents are really cheap. There's no reason to do that. Now, once it hits the mid-90s, the buddy system is mandatory. Everybody needs a buddy. I don't really want to be out there by myself or with people, but sometimes you have to anyway, so that's easy. Now, one of the things we do with the buddy system is when you feel the heat stupids coming on, you tell your buddy. Because if you're the kind of person who wants to be working outside, part of what happens with the heat stupids is kind of like a hyper-focus thing. You don't want to stop what you're doing because you're like, we're so close. Another fun feature of the heat stupids is also that you can get really crabby if you feel like someone's interrupting you or slowing you down. I wouldn't know anything about that though. And that's why you want to have buddies. So you can make each other go actually take the break before it gets worse. And if you both get the heat stupids, that's too much heat stupid in one place. Go. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, go take the break right now. Okay, so that is recognizing the heat stupids. Now let's talk about how to get out of it. And again, your mileage will vary. Get to know yourself and how you respond. For me and a lot of other people who work outdoors, you can usually bounce back from the heat stupids with a good 10-ish minute break. If you're in the shade with water in your shirt, you're hydrated, and hopefully there's a breeze, that's going to fix you up. Usually. And if it's been a couple hours or more since you ate, get a snack, because blood sugar is also a really important part of this. You don't want to run out. This is a pro-carbs agricultural environment. Now, what happens if you ignore the heat stupids? In my experience, again, other people's may vary, the next thing that happens is the heat clumsies. You graduate from brain don't work good to body don't work good. And in honor of graduating from brain fog to full-on clumsy, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Tells the algorithm that this stuff is interesting and more people ought to see it. And if you really love heat stroke content, there's a Patreon. It's down there. Okay, back to the heat clumsies. Here's what that's like. You're already dumb, and now you're starting to trip on things that you wouldn't normally trip on. You're just bad at picking up your feet, so you just keep hitting stuff and stumbling. And just like the heat stupids, the heat clumsies don't feel like an emergency either. Even though you're already deteriorating, it doesn't feel like an emergency, which is interesting. What the heat clumsies feel like, for those who imbibe, you know that point of tipsiness that's nowhere near fall down drunk. It's just your normal clumsiness level plus about 5%. That's the heat clumsies at first. That's what they feel like. So it's not necessarily noticeable. It's almost at your normal baseline level of clumsy. And that does not feel like an emergency. And that's how it gets you. Because clumsiness is also known as, clinically, loss of coordination. It starts out mild, but it will get way, way worse if you don't get on top of it ASAP. So on my farm, we use the heat stupids as our yellow flag, and the heat clumsies are our red flag. It's really time to go take a break if you haven't yet. Don't be a hero. Stop what you're doing and take a break now. And especially as an employer, it is your responsibility to make sure your people know that you would rather they go take a break and drink water before things get bad than to push it and have a problem. And you're going to have to tell them that over and over and over again, and also do it yourself before they'll believe you. That's your job. Also for me, if I'm not paying attention to the heat clumsies, there comes a point where I put cool water on my skin and it doesn't feel good anymore. It feels bad. If that happens, girl, get inside, take a break. So that is recognizing the heat clumsies. How do we get out of them? Again, everybody's mileage is going to vary. For myself personally, I usually want to do at least a good 20 to 30 minute break in the shade, drink a lot of water, get some carbs in you, and also get your shirt wet. That will usually do it. If you can get in the shade, and especially if there's a breeze, you're going to be okay. So remember how getting out of the heat stupids takes maybe 10-ish minutes and heat clumsies take more like half an hour to get out of? That's why it's good to take small frequent breaks. If you wait too long, it takes longer to get out of it, and it's actually kind of a waste of time. Don't do that to yourself. The longer you wait to take breaks, the longer you spend in the heat stupids and clumsy stage where you are a danger to yourself and others. Which is why, again, as an employer, it is my job to let people know I want you to take frequent, small breaks. Do not wait until you're having a really bad time. It is my job to make it clear that if a crew member needs to go take water, I'm not looking at them like, what a wuss. I am thinking, thank you. That's one less thing I have to worry about. It is the smart, practical thing to do. That is what I prefer. Obviously, if somebody just sits under the tent drinking water all day, then we have a problem, but that hasn't really happened. So people who decide to get a job working outdoors on purpose don't usually do that. So I don't know. Hasn't been a problem. And I just feel like this stuff should not be that hard to understand. No sports team tries to run through a whole game with no water, no timeouts, or rotating out players, because that would be insane. You ain't gonna win anything like that. And that's with world-class athletes. So why would a farm be any different? Answer me that. Okay, so that's way too much info on recognizing the early stages of heat stress so you can deal with it in time. Any other miscellaneous pointers I might have missed? Every season I start in spring and gradually work my way up as the weather gets warmer to working in 95-degree heat. So I have several months to get acclimated. Do not go from no work outside to working outside for hours in 90+ degree heat and high humidity all at once. Don't do that to yourself. Even if you're athletic, your body ain't gonna know what to do. That's going to mess you up. Acclimation is a very real thing. You need to give your body time to kind of figure that out. Usually takes at least a couple weeks. You want to go easy the first week and then kind of like a little harder the second week. Work your way up. Do not try to do that all at once. Early mornings, obviously cooler. Use that. We are doing like a 6 a.m. to noon schedule mostly on the farm these days. Anything that happens on the farm after about noon, we're not there anymore. So That's Jesus's problem. A gallon of drinking water for me lasts about 6 hours when we're in the 80s. Once we start hitting the 90s, it's more like 3 or 4 hours. So bring a lot of water, plan accordingly. Yeah, don't bring one little bottle of water. You're gonna have a bad time. Don't chug all your water at once. It'll bounce back. This is another good reason to take smaller, more frequent breaks. If you try and do the camel, where you drink all your water at once, it's going to come back. Blood sugar. There's some more to know about this. When it is really hot, your appetite can kind of disappear, so you can just forget to eat, especially when you're focused on hydration. I need Gatorade and water. If you're thinking about that, you can forget to eat. That's a thing. Because the heat stupids also help with forgetting to eat. And low blood sugar can make you a lot more prone to getting disoriented, getting clumsy, and passing out. So if you're going to do more than a couple hours on the farm, you need carbs. On the farm, I like to just bring a sleeve of bagels out there with me because a sleeve of bagels is relatively healthy, it's cheap, and it's one of the few things where if you leave it in a hot car by accident, it will still be edible afterwards. And that means a lot out on the farm. If you have POTS, low blood pressure, and or you just kind of tend to black out or gray out when you stand up, the heat stupids and heat clumsies will come for you faster. Whenever I talk to a large group of people about what the stages of heat stress feel like, you'll get people with POTS going, that's just me all the time. And heat stroke really is just everybody gets to experience POTS. If you think about it. Blacking out when you stand up is a problem that I've had to some extent for most of my farm work career. I thought that was normal. When I found out it wasn't, I was like, really? People can just stand up? So if people want to hear more about managing that specifically in the heat, let me know. I didn't have it too severely, but it happened. Final bit of editing Sarah in here to add. I can't believe I forgot this part, but remember the lady with the 20,000 acre farm where people keep dying who's in the North Carolina State Senate? She don't have to stay there. Here's the person running against her. It's James Gaillard. And this is not sponsored in any way. I just personally don't think Lisa Barnes should be in charge of how we farm in this state. That's crazy. Gaillard's got a solid shot this year, which is weird for this district. And I'm a simple girl. I think if you have a chance to get a 20,000 acre aristocrat out of power, you should take it. If you'd like to help, I'm sure the Gaillard folks would love to hear from you about volunteering, phone baking, or whatever free cash is still circulating in the economy at this point. They have a website. I'll put it here or down there or maybe both. Okay, plug over. We're going to keep going. I've had working outside in the heat situations where someone with POTS just did pass out and I had to carry them back into the shade. It happens. Don't feel like you have to tough it out because if you pass out, then someone else has to carry you back. And it's like, who's this helping? It's not wimping out when you walk yourself back to the shade. That's chivalry. You're saving someone else from having to do it. It's a beautiful thing. And final note, remember, this is not medical advice. I am not a doctor for people. I'm a doctor for plants. So all of this is just coming from, I'm a lady who works outside. Everybody's body is different. That's why I really focus on training people to know what the early stages of heat stress feel like, because the timing on when it happens is going to be different for everybody. You can't give a concrete rule of after 20 minutes or after 30 minutes. It's different for everybody. You got to pay attention to what's happening in here, So I hope this has been useful. And also I was just realizing maybe helps explain why there hasn't been much video coming from the farm. Sometimes I'll record something and then I look back at the footage later and I'm like, oh, she is not making a lot of sense. Or sometimes each clip is fine, but none of the clips really make sense with each other. So you can't really make a video out of it. It's all just a little spacey. So that's fun. I was just able to hire a couple people, which has been amazing. And you would think would make it possible to record more video on the farm because there's more time. But no, now I just feel extra stupid being out there hi guys, welcome to the farm in 95-degree heat while other people are actually working. Doesn't feel right. So just remember, kids, if you ever want to make it big on YouTube, start by eliminating your sense of shame. Y'all do good out there.